Before toilet paper, what was used to clean the tushes of England's royals, and what happened to those soiled materials afterwards? What were the common people using too, and which ancient societies likely shared wiping devices with complete strangers? Probably not questions you've ever asked yourself, but that's exactly why History Calling is here, to uncover the weird, the smelly, and the sometimes downright disgusting stories from history. Get comfy, because today we're diving into life before toilet roll, meeting the poor souls responsible for cleaning up after royal ablutions, and discussing the different methods of keeping one's derriere in sparkling condition, from antiquity to the modern era. Because even today, loo roll isn't used by everyone. Far from it, in fact. Go back a couple of thousand years and loo roll was not going to be an option for you when you had to take care of business. But all over the world, a variety of other methods for sorting yourself out were invented in its place. A public latrine in Xinjiang, China, which was a stopping point on the famous Silk Road trading route and was in use between 111 BC and 109 AD, was excavated in 1992 and was found to contain hygiene sticks, which were bamboo or wooden sticks with cloth wrapped around them to be used for wiping. I'm not clear if such sticks were personal belongings that travellers took with them when they left, or if they were provided at the latrine and used by multiple people. But in some parts of the ancient world, evidence suggests that sharing was encouraged. In a similar vein to the ancient Chinese hygiene sticks, the ancient Romans may have used a stick with a sea sponge on it called a tersorium to wipe their nether regions, then shared it with anyone else in need of it in the communal toilets they often used when outside the home. It would have been cleaned first in either a bucket of salt water or vinegar, although I'm not sure that would have been enough for me. However, it must be said that it's not clear from the written or archaeological records if tersoria were used to clean humans or to clean the toilets themselves, like a kind of ancient toilet brush. At least a sponge on a stick would be soft, though. Other methods of getting the job done sound downright painful and left the behind in question at risk of some injury. One technique favoured by the Romans and Greeks was to use oval or circular pieces of ceramic called pessoi, meaning pebbles, with their edges smoothed out, though I must admit that even having looked at a picture of this in a Greek context dated to around 510 to 500 BC, I still don't really understand how it was meant to work. It had no water in it and no absorbing properties, so how would rubbing pebbles on your derriere clean it? I guess the point was to scrape the poop off your skin, but I feel like some material would definitely get left behind, no pun intended, so it doesn't seem very efficient to me. Thoughts in the comments section, please. The Greeks and Romans definitely used them though, for aside from the pictorial records, pessoi have also been found in excavated latrines with solidified excrement still on them. The Greeks even liked to take this opportunity to get a dig in at their enemies, and pessoi would sometimes be recycled pieces of ceramic originally called ostraca, which had the names of men who were to be ostracized written on them. Pessoi had their problems though, for as one article, linked below, which I read for this video, stated, the abrasive characteristics of ceramic suggest that long-term use of pessoi could have resulted in local irritation, skin or mucosal damage, or complications of external hemorrhoids. Ouch! You do not want to be scraping or piercing hemorrhoids with ceramic, gang. That is nasty. And so we come to the dawn of the era of toilet paper. Its use actually goes back thousands of years, just not in the West. Instead, the Chinese were way ahead of us, for there is evidence in their archives that loo roll was in use by the 6th century AD at the latest. The scholar and official Yan Ji Chui, and I am so sorry for what I am sure was a mangled pronunciation there, who lived between 531 and 591, said in around 589 that Paper on which there are quotations or commentaries from 5 classics, a very famous Chinese text, or the names of sages, I dare not use for toilet purposes. The paper being used then was not originally intended for human behinds. It was being reused, and it was deemed offensive to use paper on which important information had been recorded. Over 260 years later, an Arab traveller to China also commented on the cleanliness habits he observed there, saying, "They, the Chinese, are not careful about cleanliness, and they do not wash themselves with water when they have done their necessities, but they only wipe themselves with paper." Oh dear. He evidently wasn't very impressed with how the then Chinese system compared to his own, and I can tell you right now, he wouldn't have liked the modern UK and Irish systems either, 'cause that's how we rule too. Still, at least it tells us not only what the Chinese were doing in that period, but that in the Arab world he was from, washing with water was the expected process. By the 14th century, the Chinese had dedicated toilet paper made from rice straw, as it had softer fibres than regular paper. Comfort is important, people, we don't want chafing. In 1393, 720,000 sheets measuring 3 feet by 2 feet were being produced by the Bureau of Imperial Supplies for use in the royal court, and the imperial family were getting 15,000 sheets of yellow square paper for their personal use. It was even fragranced. Furthermore, as we'll see going forwards, they weren't the only royals whose backsides got special treatment. Let's now briefly look at other methods of dealing with this issue. I've seen some suggestions that Vikings would use sheep and lamb's wool for wiping, Hawaiians would use coconut shells, Eskimos made use of snow, Spanish and Portuguese sailors used frayed rope, and French royalty used lace, which does sound like something the French royals would have done. However, the source I found this information in, a supposedly academic article with the exciting title Post-Defecation Cleansing Methods, Tissue Paper or Water, an Analytical Review, cited Wikipedia for the information I just relayed to you. This is a pet peeve of mine. Wikipedia is not a reputable source and should never be used in academic works. What it means is that no real source was provided for the cleansing methods of Vikings and Eskimos, etc. At best, we'll just call that anecdotal evidence, which is also the category I'm going to put stories of people using moss as a wiping device into, as I've only come across that story in historical fiction. Again, not a real source, as my episode all about the dangers of historical fiction, which I'll leave linked for you, discusses in great detail. I will say, though, that I've seen modern YouTube videos where people talk about using moss if they're out hiking and are stuck, but I'm not advocating for or against that or saying that our ancestors did it. Let's get back to some well-sourced stories about what definitely was done, and as promised, I'm now going to tell you about some royal behinds in England and how they were taken care of during the early modern period after they were done using their other throne. These royal derrieres were kept spick and span through the use of something called stool duckets, which might be administered by the groom of the stool, or female equivalent for the ladies, whose job it could be to do the actual cleaning. Stool duckets were pieces of linen used in the same way as modern toilet roll would be, and we see orders for them popping up in royal accounts sometimes. For example, after Mary II's death in December 1694, mourning clothing was ordered up for her husband, William III, and amongst the list of fabrics he needed was a note for 48 ells of Holland for 9 dozen of stool duckets. That's 108 stool duckets, you guys. It makes me wonder if William had bowel problems, for these duckets were designed to be cleaned and reused, not thrown away after one use. That means, of course, that there was someone whose job it was to wash the soiled ducats sent down from the royal lavatory. Actually, a privy stool would be the way to describe it in this era, and we even know who some of these employees were. Allow me to introduce you to Mrs. Grosvenor, laundrywoman to Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, wife of George III, whose job it was to clean basically every piece of fabric that touched the royal body, from clothing to bed linens to stool ducats. To keep these duckets looking their best, blue dye could be added to the tub in which they were washed to counteract the yellowing of the linen and preserve its white appearance for longer. I bet your job doesn't seem as bad now, does it? Still, as unpleasant as this is to modern ears, though it's really no different to reusable nappies for babies, which must also have been being used before disposable nappies were invented, at least it was environmentally friendly, and the Stool duckets were being reused by the same person, or perhaps members of the same royal family, which I think renders it a little less off-putting than the idea of sharing hygiene sticks or tersoria with strangers. Just my opinion. Those were royal rear ends, however. Other people were using different materials, and the use of paper, even if it wasn't dedicated toilet paper, came into fashion as that material became cheaper and cheaper. The Earl of Chesterfield told his son in 1747 that he knew of a man who bought, quote, a common edition of Horace, of which he tore off gradually a couple of pages, carried them with him to that necessary place, read them first, and then sent them down as a sacrifice to Cloacina. Thus was so much time fairly gained. Cloacina, by the way, is a reference to the goddess of the Cloaca Maxima, which was the main sewer of Rome, showing, I think, that the Romans really did have gods and goddesses for everything. So some sort of paper was becoming a popular alternative to using a rag or some other substance, and it can even be seen in satirical images of people relieving themselves in the mid-18th century. But when did loo roll, as we know it today in the West, finally make an appearance? The answer is in 1857 with the sale of Medicated Paper for the Water Closet by Joseph Gaiety in packs of 500 sheets. So not actually a roll, to be fair, and of course you can still get sheets of toilet paper today. As the decades went on, the process for creating this paper improved, and in modern times there is higher and lower quality stuff with the best designed to be as soft on your tush as possible. Just because toilet paper had been invented in the West, though, doesn't mean there was an immediate uptake. Change takes time, and in the 20th century, even though the trend of reusing cloth or other materials for wiping faded, a notable exception being the case of cloth nappies for babies, which held out for longer but still eventually faded to a large extent. I literally don't know anyone in my age group who uses these on their kids. The idea of waste not, want not remained in many cases. Thus, although loo roll was now available, plenty of people didn't see it as something worth wasting money on if other options were available. What other options, I hear you say? I'm glad you asked. In the middle decades of the 20th century, pieces of newspaper were used, and this I am absolutely certain of, as I know someone, rather older than me, who remembers doing this as a youngster. According to my informant, you would cut the newspapers up into little squares or rectangles, punch a hole in them, and put them on a piece of string hanging on a nail next to the loo, and bingo! You have a steady stream of educational reading material while you're doing your business, and something to use to clean up with afterwards. Apparently scrunching it up before use made it a bit softer on the skin, by the way. When everyone was losing their minds during the pandemic, panic buying loo roll and causing unnecessary shortages, I also remember joking that if we ran out, it was newspapers we were going to have to go back to. Said informant also added that though their school did provide loo roll at this point, it was cheap and shiny material, for which read not very absorbent, and therefore lousy for the task at hand. And having shared this story with you, can I just say that I cannot wait for the comments under this video, because I just know some of you are going to have similar horror stories for me. I still remember the video I did about the medieval nobles who died by all falling into a giant toilet together and drowning in the muck, and the comments under that were dynamite, as people shared their awful toilet experiences, including outhouses on old farms and even some very dodgy latrines at Girl Guide camps in the 1960s. I'll leave that video linked below for you, and if you have the stomach to watch it, I strongly recommend you take a look at those comments too. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll get really good at suppressing your gag reflex. Moving on. To finish up, let's take a quick gander at modern loo habits. Nowadays, bidets are a popular option in some parts of the world, so that a jet of water washes the relevant area after the main event has taken place in a separate loo. And they did exist in centuries gone by, albeit without the jet. You just have to fill it up with water. Of course, you're either going to have a wet posterior after that, or have to use tissue paper or a towel anyway to dry yourself off, unless your bidet is very fancy and will blow air at your nether regions to dry them off for you. So from an economic and environmental viewpoint, I don't think it's better, but it might be more effective and hygienic depending on how efficient the bidet is. There are other advantages and disadvantages too. A bidet has less chance of giving you an irritation rash, but more chance of scalding your special area if the water is too hot, and if the water isn't clean, it could introduce bacteria, while a particularly strong jet could also cause injury to your you-know-what. Still, I imagine that in countries where their use is popular, they think that those who don't use them are practically savages. And who knows, maybe they're right. This particular savage had to go watch a video on how to use one as part of my research for this episode, because being from the UK, I've never used a bidet, and I think I've only ever seen them once or twice during foreign holidays on mainland Europe. Loo roll isn't perfect either, of course. It takes a lot of water to create it, so it's not as environmentally friendly as you might think. It too can introduce bacteria if not clean, and if you're in an area of the world with poor plumbing, you can't flush it and so have to put it in a bin next to the loo. As someone from a country where this is not the done thing at all, this makes me cringe, but I know that it's entirely normal elsewhere, including Greece, because family members who went on holiday there told me about it. Then there are some areas where you wash your posterior with water and your left hand because your right hand is used for eating. Again, very different to anything I would consider doing, but it's evidently been working well for large sections of the human population for a long time, so who am I to judge? I should add that they do generally wash their hands after doing this as well, just as we would generally do so after using toilet paper. In some very poor areas of the world, though, there's really no option for cleaning after relieving oneself. In many parts of India, for instance, there are no plumbed toilets or clean latrines available, and people just have to go in the streets, the local countryside, on railroad tracks or in rivers, including the famous river the Ganges, which is used as a large group toilet by the poor, though it is extremely dirty and polluted. Even when toilet facilities are available, many don't use them as public defecation is so normal and socially acceptable that they simply continue to do it. As a result, these people often have nothing to use to clean themselves beyond the river itself, if that's what they're using. They have much worse health outcomes due to the pollution they are constantly surrounded by and the contamination of food and water supplies by fecal matter. And of course, it also places women in particular at risk of being attacked whilst doing their business. The government is trying to address the problem and get more people to use modern toilets, but there's still a long way to go. I hope you enjoyed and weren't too disgusted by that trip into the history of humanity's toilet habits. If so, please do consider giving the video a thumbs up, clicking the subscribe button, it's entirely free, and switching on the notification bell so that you get a little ding every time I upload. You can also get more from me by becoming a YouTube member or by joining me on patreon.com/historycalling, where I release bonus material every week, including early access to ad-free videos and extra podcasts. If you're not sure about signing up to a Patreon membership, you can also purchase many of the bonuses I release there on a one-off basis. You can join my free mailing list too, available on my website, historycallingofficial.com, to get 2 complimentary downloads right away. Or if you have Irish ancestry, you might want to take a look at my book, Find Your Irish Ancestors Online, available from Amazon as an ebook or paperback. All the links are below for you. For more on the theme of toilets, see that video I mentioned about the group of men who all died together in a medieval loo, and let me know below what you think is the strangest thing used before toilet paper. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep learning.